All right. Welcome, everyone, to our nowadays weekly SMI community meeting. Thanks a lot for showing up. And this meeting is recorded, as you know, so beware what you say. Please do put yourself on our meeting agenda, your name there. If you don't know where it is, this is where it is. And with that, we can actually yeah, Michelle already put it there. Thank you very much. If you look at the chat, with that, we can already jump into the first discussion item. We have a light agenda, so we don't need to rush too much. It's the issue 223, traffic split, route service clarification and change proposal. Who wants to take that?
Hey, I think that Johnson is not here. He's the author of the PR. Let me ping him and see if he wants.
I'm actually here.
Oh, hey, Johnson.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I brought up issue 223. Open PR 223 thanks to Michelle. So it seems like from looking at the code, looking at our documentation, in traffic split, the route service could actually be a route FQDN. So any Kubernetes FQDN or just any FQDN in general, abc.com, or keep the Kubernetes FQDN that resolves to a service like namespace and service name. It works for traffic split routes. So I opened this PR to change it so that to change SMI traffic split so that we use the traffic, we refer to it as traffic split route FQDN instead of service. But there's a suggestion to split this PR in two. One PR to clarify that the route service does not need to be a Kubernetes service, and two, changing the spec service key to FQDN.
There is, I don't see Stefan here, but there's also the comment from Stefan in terms of backwards compatibility. Can you maybe elaborate on that, Chance?
Yeah. So the problem, I think that Stefan made a good point. The problem is if we make this, then it is breaking change. Whatever pre-existing traffic split specs out there won't work because service would need to be changed to a FQDN. That makes a good. That's a good point. What's your comment, Michelle, on that one?
Well, two things. In terms of like backwards compatibility, Nick and I have been working on the controller project, mostly Nick, and he actually wrote a bunch of conversion webhook logic for us. And so that's something that's in the SDK now, and we could build a conversion logic for the next version of traffic split if we did change service to FQDN. So for anyone who isn't like super familiar with the spec, I think some of us know it like off the top of our heads, but essentially in a traffic split, in the traffic split YAML, or in the YAML that you use to define a traffic split in Kubernetes, you have some keys and some fields that help identify like what you're trying to do. And so under the spec key in that manifest, you have a key called service, and service is not super descriptive. And so in the description, you'll realize, okay, this is any FQDN. And when a client makes a request to this FQDN, there's also some fields in that traffic split that define the behavior on what happens to that request. And generally, it'll get split amongst a certain set of backends, a certain set of other Kubernetes services, and you'll define a weight. So like what percentage of traffic will go to which service. So Johnson and I were just kind of talking about the spec, and this came up as a pain point. So I think there's two things that need to happen. One is we do need to clarify in the spec that service key means FQDN, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Kubernetes service. I would be really curious to know from other implementers, like if you ran into this issue, like Michael or like anybody else who has played with SMI implementation, like have you run into this issue before? Because when we did it with OSM, we thought it was just Kubernetes services, but when you read the fine print, you realize, no, it's not. And I just wanted us to add like a sentence that says, hey, this does not have to be a Kubernetes service, like in the spec. So that's one part of it.
I'm 100% in support of that. I think originally service was just defined to be, it was very loose. It was just a string. It wasn't necessarily referring to a Kubernetes service or anything. It was a little bit more abstract. So it could be like a virtual service, which doesn't actually have a Kubernetes domain. It's a specific facet of a service mesh, or it could be anything. So yeah, I think renaming it to FQDN makes a lot of sense from an understanding perspective. I think also in terms of compatibility, as you mentioned, we can handle that because they're both going to be string keys. So we could handle that through the conversion webhooks. And what's really good as well is it also opens up the possibility that we are considering elements beyond Kubernetes for the specification. So, which was something that we've talked about.
Right.
Also,
that's,
I would like YOLO merge that.
That's a great point. And to the point that Keith made on the chat, because you used the word mistake, I do not believe in this context of standardization that it's not a mistake that you are making. It's really the same way if there is an incident, right? I mean, blaming someone, that's the cheap way out, right? It's the question, what can the organization do better to avoid that kind of failure? And in the same way here, if something in the specification is unclear, you can never, and you should never ever blame an implementer, right? It means that the specification needs to be unambiguous and needs to make it very, very clear explicitly what do we mean. I can back it up by using examples, but examples can never be exhaustive. So it's never the implementer's fault. It's always on the side of who writes it. And again, I don't want to point fingers or whatever. It's just usually you discover these things by implementing, where someone comes across like, what exactly is meant by that, right? And so these discussions that we're having here in terms of what does it mean, clarification needs, and so on, that's the very core of standardization business, right? That's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely natural and good that we have that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, 100% echoing that. It is 1000% the spec which is at fault, not somebody who's misunderstood the spec. The spec has missing context, which was probably around the time. And I would happily blame somebody, because that somebody's probably me at some point down the line where
I agree. Let's blame that's
yeah, blame me. I think it's fine.
That's cool.
So I think this is a great thing. I think this is a great thing about the spec, because all of these implementations add to the wider understanding, thrash out the user experience of the specification, and make it better for future users. So yeah, I think this is a great deal.
Awesome. I think Stefan's comment is like just in that, like this is like a change, not just a clarification. So I would propose that we just break this into two PRs, one that just clarifies the text and one that changes the key to FQDN, just so we can be really clear on how we're voting. I think the first one is very non-controversial. So yeah.
Perfect. Can you, whoever is scribing, that's also, yeah, whoever, Michelle or Lee, can you please make sure that we have that in the in writing, so that, for example, Stefan, who is currently not around today, has a chance to read that also in the meeting minutes. Is there any other view? So what we have on the table, the proposal is split it into PRs to make that clear. Any other comments or suggestions? This is what Michelle just summarized. The proposal is that. Does anyone object to that? Is there any other view or alternative way to go about it? Going once, looking at Lee, who currently is in hiding. Going twice.
I'm typing. I'm busy typing. Yeah, no.
I don't want to distract you. If you're typing, then please. I just want to make sure that we don't gloss over it or rush through it. We do have the time if there is an alternative or differing view on what we just discussed, then please.
Yeah, quick point of clarification, just to catch up on some of the work that Nick and Michelle have been doing around the controller and the ability to grease the wheels around make the braking change less hurtful, less painful. Is part of that. Okay, can you recap that now that we've walked through the issue? I mean, we should. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what we're trying to do with the new controller SDK and specifically the conversion webhooks is to abstract, for the best part, the pain of breaking changes where possible from implementers of the specification or consumers of the users of the SDK. So in the instance like this, because it's predominantly a field renaming, and in addition, I think there is a purpose change, but ultimately we're renaming a field. The type remains the same. So the way that the SDK would handle things is we pin the SDK to a specific API version. So whenever anybody's interacting with the controller via code, they're interacting with specification, let's say v4 alpha. Now, if somebody submits v5 alpha as a Kubernetes resource, what happens is the controller, the conversion webhook will just convert that to the base type of v4 alpha, which then is fired into the controller's event queue. So the base types which are what are stored, but the conversion webhooks allow the end user to use the differing versions, and theoretically everything's just magically works. And don't ever quote me on that, but theoretically.
So with the conversion webhook, there was this nuance I read about, which was nothing happens to the resources that are already stored at an older version unless you update or modify them as some way. Then it gets converted to the new version. So that was just a nuance that I read about and wanted to see if Nick, you had any thoughts. You know what I'm talking about? I can pull up the exact text.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Then hey, it's a point in time. It's a point in time of scheduling conversion, not a retroactive conversion of existing objects. And so, yeah, that's to be an item to be accounted for, whether it's accounted for in terms of manual instruction that there's a caveat here and you've got to you implementer have to do something, or hey, if there's a function of the SDK that you can separately invoke potentially, or
yeah, I think it's important for, I guess, I'm just bringing it up from an implementator's perspective. So for example, OSM will have to handle 2 or 3 versions at a time. We would have to be able to handle the old version and the stored version. And then ask our users to eventually update. And people don't do CRD upgrades all that much. So I feel we are doing it really frequently because we're at alpha, but we have lots of people, lots of implementations of it. And so we have to deal with this problem a little bit more, I think, than maybe other people in the community or other projects in the community who are doing stuff with CRDs. So that's just one thing. But from an implementator's perspective, you cannot just upgrade your implementation to the next to handle only the next version or the updated version. You always have to handle at least one version behind, or whatever versioning contract you have for your consumer base.
That matrix becomes really interesting, particularly in context of a spec like SMI, is that while from OSM's perspective, from an implementer's perspective, you could take a stance and say, hey, user, there's a dependency of this version of OSM on, an external dependency of having a particular version of SMI CRs, CRDs. And so as such, as you go to upgrade or change things, we require that, like, here's our matrix and you've got to stay in lockstep with whatever that is a reasonable thing, I think, for any implementer to suggest. The challenge with it, or where it becomes more stickier, especially in the case of SMI, is like, well, if they're not just using SMI for one mesh or for one purpose, but if they have, then it becomes harder to place that requirement on on the user.
Yeah, and just because I don't have a call to action necessarily, I'm going to try to kind of wrap this conversation up. This is a topic that we just need to kind of keep tabs on as people start implementing the newer versions of the traffic split, or whatever versions, whatever CRs you end up implementing. Let's all kind of think about like versioning and who handles what and who's responsible for that, especially in a scenario where there are multiple tools using SMI in the same cluster. How much responsibility around maintaining multiple versions of SMI resources we want to, SMI versions we want to support, just a thing. If we can talk about this more in the chat, I think. Is that cool? Okay. All right. Michael, there's another issue, because you're moderating, there's another issue on traffic split we could talk about, but since we have like 10 minutes, I don't know, there's also new people in the community if they want to introduce themselves.
Yeah, let's maybe do an introduction, and if we then still have some time, let's see. Who wants to introduce? Who is new this time around?
I'm new.
Please go ahead.
Hey folks, Jason Morgan with Buoyant. Just kind of stopping in to see what this is all about. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining, by the way.
Welcome. Yeah.
I'm also new. Keith Maddox. I'm a senior DevOps engineer at Shipt, and really interested to see what how SMI is developing and help us to evaluate what service mesh to pick and the best way to go about getting involved with service meshes. So happy to be here.
Cool. What does your company do?
We are a grocery delivery service, and we had lots of scale in the past year, and so service mesh is really something that we're looking to use to alleviate a lot of pain points. So happy to be involved.
Awesome. Thanks for your feedback, by the way, in the chat.
Yeah. Can you maybe share a little more what your potential use cases for service meshes are? Or is that something you cannot or don't want to share?
I mean, I can share, sure. Essentially, we've got, like many people who use service mesh, we've got a microservice architecture across multiple clusters, and we've had several pain points around load balancing between those two clusters, observability, mutual TLS, getting a good idea of service dependencies and things like that. And at our scale and with the size of our team, we are looking to move to a service mesh in the nearest term, but don't want to lock ourselves out of other options down the line. So that's one of the reasons why SMI is super attractive, is because it does give you that consistent standard set of CRDs to be able to use. And so I just wanted to poke my head in, see what kind of things are coming up, and it's been really great to learn and see all the work that you guys are doing. So kudos, and like I said, happy to be here.
Welcome, Keith. Wait,
Awesome.
so basically you guys are looking to use service meshes, MTLS across multiple clusters, you said? Nice.
Yes, that's the goal. Yes.
Nice. Potential multi-cluster user.
That's correct. I'm also I also keep my head poked in the SIG multi-cluster meetings for the Kubernetes project, just to see what's going, what the direction everybody's going in, and try to stay abreast of those. So just want to learn all I can.
Awesome. Are you aware of what we are doing in the issue? Is it 212? My brain. Around so every other Wednesday we have the SMI working group on multi-cluster, and so if you scroll down in the minutes, you will see from last week, last Wednesday, what we discussed there, and definitely very, very much appreciate if you if you have any feedback there, please do.
Fantastic. I did not know about that. I'll make sure to pop my head in there as well.
So that's let me share the current work in progress, but definitely if you have anything to add there, I just put it on the chat as well. The current working document, and there's an issue 212, but if you look at that document, that should have everything.
Fantastic. I will spend some time with this, and for sure, anything I can contribute, I'll make a comment or something like that. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. And again, it's mainly about your requirements. Feel free to be very don't worry too much about the implementation part. Just if you say like this a requirement or your wish list or whatever, that's really super useful.
For sure. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. I think everyone else is
Hi.
well known.
I'm new too.
Yes, you need to. Oh my God.
Hi, folks.
I saw you already.
Yeah.
Sorry. Please go ahead.
That's fine. That's fine. Actually, I was just passing by, so I have joined the community like two or 3 days back. So I just want to know what's going in the community. So yeah.
Cool. Welcome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
What's your interest or like?
Actually, I'm not a professional DevOps guy, but our company's like trying to see what's going on here in this thing. So I'm here.
Awesome.
I'm in kind of update and I just want to contribute to the community too. So kind of.
Cool.
Umair, nice to have you. Thanks for jumping
Thanks a lot.
in. I recognize you.
Yeah.
I recognize the connection. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool. But I believe that is now it, unless Mick Jackson says he wants to introduce himself, but then I have to kick him off the call. No, I think we're done with introductions. Or did I miss anyone else? No. I think that's it.
Johnson, you've been on the call before, right?
Yeah, I've been on several calls already.
Cool. All right, never mind then.
Yes. Cool. All right, we have 5 minutes left. I don't know. Do you want to give it a try, Michelle? Or
yeah, I'll just give it like a 1 minute pitch. This will be I'm really into making sure we have a good traffic split, so we kind of move this to like beta. There is a issue out there. I sent it over already in the chat. It's issue 218. All right, so one of the issues I had with traffic split, especially when we were trying to implement V1 Alpha 3 and 4. By the way, we have V1 Alpha 3 and 4, and they're the exact same thing because I made a mistake in when we were upgrading the versions. So 3 and 4 are the same, so when you can use them interchangeably. But essentially, it has this matches condition. So when you hit the root service, when a request comes to the root service, it can split to a set of backends based on some HTTP routing conditions, like what path you're matching on, headers, things like that. So if you go to the issue, you'll see that. And then let's see, actually, maybe I'll just share my screen real quick. Google Chrome. All right, do y'all see the browser? Okay, great. So, so this was a thing. Okay, and then there were some proposals on how to make this a little bit better. So I think, one second. I think it was that this basically I wanted to change the key to rules instead of matches. And I wanted to be able to like have certain like multiple HP route groups referenced in the condition. So there was basically some clarification around that. And if we did that, this spec would match the format of the access control one, the traffic target. And I wanted to just kind of make it the same pattern. But what actually ended up happening was more interesting. So one of the end users suggested we basically, okay, so one of the pieces of feedback we've been getting from end users on our end in terms of like SMI traffic split is they want to be able to specify like multiple routing conditions in one traffic split. And so when I saw this from an end user here, I just wanted to highlight it and really get some feedback here. So essentially what's being proposed is that instead of having one root service split to a set of backends on one match condition, you can basically define a bunch of different rules for that one root service. So the problem actually is that for one root service, you might have to create several different traffic split objects. But in this proposal, you would only have one traffic split object, which would contain an entire set of rules for one root service / FQDN. So, so it just makes it a lot easier as an end user. Like, so as an implementer, I don't really think about that. But as an end user, this makes a lot of sense. And this might be more what end users desire. So this is my 3-minute pitch, I think. Please take a look at this since we only have a minute left on this call. And I would love to follow up and get people's feedback either on the thread, in chat, or we'll follow up at the next meeting as well to kind of make a decision. This would be an additional change to traffic split. That's all.
Cool. Thank you so much. And yeah, we have unfortunately we're in the top of the half hour. So thank you so much. And yeah, let's see how we get on with that, and we can continue on Slack, obviously, as usual. Next week we are back on multi-cluster. So everyone have a great week. See you next week, hopefully, if you're interested in multi-cluster. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.